Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritual Boujee Astrology, and we're going to take a look at the astrological transits of June the 2nd through June the 8th. Now, before we do any type of recap, breakdown, or anything like that, quick little reminder for everybody that throughout the course of Gemini season, there is a BOGO special on my 90-minute session. So if you go to the website, www.thespirituallyboujee.com, go to astrological services, look for the line that says BOGO Gemini season special. You will actually be able to get two 90-minute sessions for the price of one. Now, if you're going to book one of those readings, I'd say definitely do it because it is the best sale you're going to get all year, just to be clear. But if you go to book those, make sure you book them at least about a month apart, 2 months apart. You can book as far out as like 9 months in the future. So I would capitalize on that special while we have it. Because on June the 20th, whenever Gemini season is done, it is done. It's going to go away. So there's that. Take advantage of this special. Moving along. The energy that we're going into this week feeds off of the last 2 weeks of May. The last 2 weeks of May was preparing for some things that came through, some of the new, some of the shock, some of the things that were brought to light. They were not planned. So not everything was prepared for, but there was still the arrival of new information, new topics, new situations, new ways of living, new ways of dealing with things, new factors within our dynamics, new factors within our home life. And a lot of where we have landed really speaks the course for how we are going to be focusing on things going into this week. But a lot of where we're going throughout the entire month of June is really going to be one large set of energy. And it feels like we needed the last 2 weeks to reveal the new. We needed the arrival of Saturn going into Aries. We needed Mercury to change signs and go into Gemini. We needed that Mercury cazimi. We needed that new moon. We needed the awareness in the shift to come through so we could process things better, so we can know what we were working with. So we knew the new rules, the new dynamics. There was a lot of new in the vibration. Now we have a better idea of what we're working with in the new, what we are finalizing, what we are preparing for, and what we are hoping to take into some level of stability. We have hopes for certain things as we go through this week, but not everybody is going to reach levels of stability over the course of the entire month of June. But whenever it comes to this energy, we're mainly putting a mental focus into something. And that's literally how we start the week, because we're going to start the week with the moon in Virgo. And a lot of what we're dealing with over the course of Monday and Tuesday is the process, the procedure, the planning, the dictation, the vibration of what was voiced, of what was communicated, of what was agreed to, what was argued about, what was brought to light through the new moon in Gemini and through the Mercury cazimi. Last week revealed something. It brought something to light. It brought something to the surface. It revealed new ideas, new truths, new realities. And I got to be honest, guys, that Mercury cazimi hit way harder than it should have. And some part of that, I really do kind of still blame Saturn. There was a lot that hit the jolt in that unexpected. And it brought certain things to the surface. We are still reeling over those things that have been brought to the surface. We are still working through that dynamic. We are still trying to put certain things into perspective from what came to light, what shifted into the focus over the course of the last 2 weeks of May as we go into this week. And we have some shifts whenever it comes to this week. One in particular has to do with Venus. Since the beginning of February, Venus has been either in her detriment or retrograde or both for the majority of the springtime, honestly and truly. But when we go through this week, Venus is going to finally change signs. Venus is going to go into Taurus. She's going to go into her own home sign. And there is meant to be elements that stabilize upon the arrival of Venus going into Taurus. But for the fixed signs in particular, Taurus risings, Scorpio risings, Leo risings, Aquarius risings, there can be certain meetings that happen immediately following Venus going into the new sign. There can be conversations, a buildup and a follow-up to something that happened prior, coming full circle, coming all the way around. There is something new in that level of stability that has levels of volume. And as we go through the transits of this week, that will make more sense whenever we get to that point. But before we can actually stabilize, there's something we need to wrap up. Those final days of Venus and Aries requires an action. It requires a reaction. Aries is a very reactive sign. There's a drive, there's a determination. There is something that we need to protect, defend ourselves regarding, make sure we have something put into place very, very clearly. We need to finalize certain things in a certain action, but we're finalizing it in the aesthetic sense. It's not just building the ramp for grandpa, going back to like one of the examples from last week's episode. It's not just building the ramp, but it's staining, putting extra things onto the ramp to make sure that it holds grit all year, like putting things in there so that way something can last. And there are certain directions and final actions that speak to necessity. Little things that, little actions that we need to wrap up before we can stabilize, before we can enjoy what we've built, what we've gone through, what we've worked through. Something needs to happen before we can enjoy it. The final little touches. But another way to look at parts of this week can be the final little areas of defense. That sounds kind of out in the air, but I mean it in this sense. Venus in Aries is working with Mars's tools. She's more willing to defend herself. She's more willing to take up for herself. And there also speaks to certain things in the vibration of speaking up for ourselves and telling someone off and letting somebody know, I'm not a little girl anymore. I won't put up with your crap. I'm not that person. I ain't the one. You're going to push my buttons. You don't have to be here. I don't have to be here. You can say what you want. You can do these things if you want to, but I ain't got to put up with it. I'm not going to let you disturb my peace. And it's like as soon as Venus leaves Aries, Venus goes home to her own house, in her own tub, in her own water, in her own place, in her own clothes, completely fine. Didn't need your drama, didn't need your bullshit, didn't need all that over there. I'm best when I'm doing what I want to do. And there is this dynamic about this week that speaks to exactly that. Working through a frustration, declaring we're not willing to put up with something, we're not going to go through a power struggle, and shifting our focus into what makes us feel whole, shaking loose certain people that tip the scales and disrupt our peace. I ain't the one. You ain't worth it. Boy, bye. Get out my face. We don't have to be family anymore. And there's something in the vibration that speaks to a clearing, so to speak, in that knowledge base. And that can be able to give peace afterwards because we finally said our piece to someone in the moment. And how that kind of comes through and when that kind of comes through, In the most human effect, it feels like it's the first half of the week, but for one or two people, it could be the weekend of just putting someone in their place is like, I will not put up with your crap. I will not allow for someone to disrupt my peace. My focus is this. Whenever it comes to that level of vibration, we pick our peace, the things that bring us peace. If something that we're doing, someone that we're talking to, someone that we're communicating with, someone that we're vibing with, if all they do is stress us out, the stress is a reaction. It is an energetic reaction. It's not just you stressing out, but it is your body saying, this is not good for us. Leave it alone. Stop touching it. We don't need to play with this person. Find another sandbox. Go do something else. Some of y'all like to ignore the stressors. But whenever your body keeps reacting to the same situation, it's telling you, we don't need to be in this mess. We don't need to be playing in this sandbox. We don't need to be a part of this. Listen to your body. It'll be helpful. Now, by the end of the week, there is news. There is decision. There is news. There are things that come to an agreement. There are things that come to completion that have immediate effect. And the immediate effect will actually be more next week. But it is whatever gets communicated, whatever the news is, whatever that little thing in the collective is. And I'll cover a little bit more in the closing. There's something that comes to completion, comes to a point, comes to a meeting that will lead to announcements next week. Now, I'm not saying this just in the mundane sense. I'm actually saying this for the collective. That there will be certain meetings with people in positions of authority, bosses, politicians, what have you, next weekend. That once those decisions are made, and the news is tweeted, the communication comes through, it'll set the stage for the rest of the month. And this will make more sense whenever I do the month ahead podcast episode. My main goal, because I have 2 events this weekend, is to actually just do the weekly podcast episode and get that out early, knowing that the June episode might either be Sunday night or Monday before I get it out. So there's that. But I'll describe a little bit more of that in the closing. Let's just get into the transits. Let's get into Monday. Now, again, whenever it comes to Monday, the moon is going to be in Virgo all day long. And whenever it comes to this vibration, we're busy working on the mechanics, working on the logistics, working on details. Details are so important. Communicating the details, writing out the details, writing out the process, writing out the plan, communicating the plan, working through the process. There's a lot of verbal, mental energy going on all throughout the day. But whenever it comes to the direct transits of Monday, there's only one, and we're done. And it actually doesn't go exact until the evening time, roughly between 9:30 and 11:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I got this at 9:30. And this is where we go through our first quarter moon. This is the sun, 12 degrees, 47 minutes, hitting a square to the moon. At this point, it's at 12 degrees, 13. If I put it at 10:30, it is a little bit more exact, but you can see right here where we're at with the square. There's a buildup in the vibration. This quarter moon, the shift in information, the shift in knowledge, the things that are coming through lead to parts of the dynamic of how the rest of this month is going to go. And it will push certain dynamics towards where they're going to come to light whenever it comes to that full moon in Sagittarius, which is not happening this week. It's happening next week. But it's a turning point. And we start to feel buildups from here. Now, we do have planets that are wrapping up certain transits as we go through this week, wrapping up its trip through signs. So there's a wrap up in the vibration, again, all throughout the week of like closing something out. but we're not all hitting close out in this one moment. This feels like a pressure button. We're hitting a little button. We've planned something all day. We've been working through something all day. Our minds are so busy, and we get to the end of the day. It's like, okay, it's nearly finished. It's nearly complete. It's nearly ready. One more thing to do, one more thing to talk about, one more thing to file, one more thing to communicate. We're close, but we don't have the cigar. And whenever we get to the evening time, our mental energy will be reaching a peak. I can't answer one more question. I can't communicate one more thing. I cannot do one. My mental capacity has been reached. I'm done. Give me a donut. Give me an ice cream cone. I'm going to bed. Just leave me alone. Some people will be reaching the peak by the evening time. Other people will still not be able to shut it off. You're reaching a peak, but then nothing is clear and nothing's making sense. And our mind just keeps going because it feels like we're just doing the same things over and over again. It feels like things are just turning through our minds and it can't shut off. But the peak is like we're getting a peak in energy because we're again at the turning point. So the downloads, the mental downloads can be bigger and heavier in the overnight hours of Monday going into Tuesday. So now we're going into the third. Again, there was only the one transit to Monday. Tuesday's not that much better. The moon's going to be in Virgo all day long. But this time we're going to have two transits. The first one is going to go the most exact between 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I'm going to get this down to 10:30. And this is where Mercury is going to square the moon. Mercury is in the higher authority in Gemini. The moon is in Mercury's sign. Remember what I said before? Like some people will be reaching a peak of like, okay, we got one more thing, and it's done. One more thing, and then, okay. This is like the final draft, the final communication. This is the one more thing for a lot of people. And over the course of the day on Tuesday, we do the one or two more things. And we finally get to a point where we're willing to mentally release something. Okay, it's as good as it's going to get. It's as typed as it's going to be. It's as processed as it's going to be. There's nothing left to communicate. We're hitting a wall. We're wrapping this up. We're getting close to being done. There's a lot of mental energy. There's a lot of our minds running. There can also be a lot throughout the day, Monday and Tuesday. I didn't really say this on Monday, of being critical and analyzing and over analyzing and questioning the analyzing and questioning the dynamic until we get to the point that we need to feel a release or that we feel it in our body. Now, this is a little bit interesting. The last few times we've had the moon hit any type of conjunction to the south node, there has been other planets on the other side surrounding the north node, encompassing the head of the dragon. This is the first transit we've had where it's just the south node and the moon. This can be emotional release. This can be a mental release. This can be mental and emotional release hitting capacity. There can be the recognition, the emotional recognition of a loss, of something that needs to be purged, of something that needs to just release from our system. There can also be the final communications of something being reached in this energy, or at least the final situations in regards to things that we know we need to work through the next day, but we're not going to work through them now. But I feel like for a lot of people, this energy will be felt in the body. Things that we need to release, things we need to cut off, and things that we need to let go of. Are we all doing the cutoff at the same time? No. And I gave a bigger window on this one. I actually wrote down on my notes from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. So I feel like Tuesday evening, we become very in tune with what we're feeling in the body. And it is what gives us the direction. It is what tells us what we're doing. It is what tells us how we're going to move along or what we're going to do from here. It's very download vibration, But there can also be the awareness that something is hitting our body. It's bothering our body, especially whenever it comes to intestinal health, or the awareness of something that has to do again with the duality. So 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms. It could also be about the cutoff and release to things tied to jobs. This is the moon in Virgo, or the ties to education. I'm going to start linking a prior video where we talked about the nodes in some of these upcoming episodes, and there's going to be reasons as to why. And I feel like some people are going to realize it in this particular lunation. Be aware of the way you are feeling Tuesday evening, and I would journal it. Honestly, I would journal it. Okay. There's nothing else. There's nothing else to Tuesday. After the moon hits that conjunction to the south node, it's not that it's void, it's just there's nothing else going on. I do think whatever we start to deal with as we go into the 4th, as we go into Wednesday, so you can see that right here, can feed back to things that happened over the course of the weekend based off of the first lunation that's going to happen in the early morning time. So I'm going to get this to 5:30 because this encompasses both of them. Between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., Uranus, 28 degrees, 18 minutes, is going to hit a trine to the moon. Jupiter, between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m., will hit a square to the moon. But over the course of the weekend, the most exact on Sunday morning, there was a square between Uranus and the moon where Jupiter had a sextile. For some people, whatever conversations are starting to come up Wednesday morning, they literally go back to the weekend. They go back to what happened even during the Mercury cazimi, given how the moon was playing out during the Mercury cazimi. That's why I'm saying that part. But this right here can be a carryover from last week's energy or the weekend's energy, depending on, or it can be both, depending on your situation. For some people, I know it's going to be both. But Uranus hitting the trine, there's something unexpected. Unexpected call, unexpected situations, something that can be a little exciting for some people, but I would expect something unexpected. Jupiter hitting the square while Uranus is still involved. Jupiter is the doctor, the guru, the teacher. The doctor is giving guidance. The teacher is giving guidance, giving lessons, giving some type of information that still can have a shock value tied to it based off how things are progressing from here. And after this dual energy of Uranus trine moon while Jupiter's squaring the moon, after this, the moon goes void. And there's something in this energy that speaks to an awareness of something that needs to be finished, wrapped up, come to a close, something that is ending. Now, why am I saying that? Because we have other energies that's going to happen throughout the day. But it really comes down to once we get into the daytime, so I'm going to bump this down to 9:30, when the moon goes into Libra, the moon in Libra is going through Venus's sign as Venus is wrapping up her trip through Aries. So over the course of the moon in Libra, Venus is ending something. And to put something to where it's more fair and to put something to where it's more balanced and feels like we have a little bit more control, that it's good for everybody, there's something that needs to get wrapped up in one way. We've got to finish the final touches on Grandpa's rant before we can use it for the long term. That would be a good way, going off prior examples and tying it to that. For other people, it's me like we have little things that push our buttons that once they are said, once they are stated, it feels like while the moon is in Libra, we're more likely to voice our defense, like how we're defending ourselves. And it's like we will defend ourselves for the last time. I ain't the one. Don't push my buttons. Don't do this crap to me. I don't have to put up with you. All you do is wreck my peace. If that's what you're going to do, I'm going to go in another direction. I'm going to go home. I'm going to cut you off. Block, 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 block. Venus is more willing to defend herself as she's wrapping up her trip through Aries and the moon being in Venus's sign. So this speaks to being aware that we're taking certain actions to finalize something, to close something out, to wrap something up in some way, shape, or form. And over the course of the next 2.5 days, so Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, it speaks to those volumes. Okay, moving along. Now, the moon is in Libra. Now, as soon as the moon goes into Libra, it's going to hit that opposition to Saturn. We're going to feel that between 9 and 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. It is having a run-in with the authority figure, with the boss, having some type of new information brought forward from an authority figure, from the boss, about the boss, from an elder, this type of thing. Now, this is the first opposition to Saturn. We haven't had a prior like moon in Libra situation opposite Saturn. This is the first one. So part of this energy can feel really rough. It can feel really tense. There can be things that, again, have to do with the elder that we're having to deal with. Something that we weren't dealing with 3 weeks ago that is now being brought up, that is now being dealt with, that is now being faced. And some part of what we're facing doesn't feel real. It feels surreal because we have Saturn hitting this conjunction to Neptune. You can't possibly think the way that you think. You can't possibly be saying that. This can't possibly be real, but it's completely real. There is something about what we're dealing with that it feels foggy, even though it is real. And whatever gets said between Saturn's opposition to the moon, again, between 9 and 11 a.m. is that. Between 11:30 and 1:30, we're going to go through the moon's opposition to Neptune. So we're right at the start of it here at this 11:30 mark. Just because one thing got said doesn't mean that we're going to take it seriously. Just because one person thinks that they can be the boss now doesn't mean I'm going to deal with that. And again, we can be more likely to say something to defend ourselves very, very quickly that I ain't the one. Anytime the moon is in Libra, it's not acting upon the rage. It is voicing the rage, voicing the rule, voicing the boundary, and very quickly having to put somebody new in their place because the dynamic we are dealing with, we were not dealing with it before. Okay. Now, the moon hit the opposition to Saturn. The moon hits the opposition to Neptune as the afternoon continues between 3 and 5 p.m. Get this now at 3:30. The moon in Libra, 3 degrees, 25 minutes, is going to hit a trine to Pluto. Now, Pluto is retrograde, so Pluto is actually moving towards the moon right here. This feels more like understanding the past, understanding trauma, understanding triggers, understanding the frustration, understanding the underlying situations, understanding why something needs to come to a close, something needs to come to an end, something needs to be worked through. Now, the other dynamic that is encompassing the entire day that is not exact yet, but it is a part of the entire day, and it's one extra part is why I keep saying there are things coming to a close and coming to an ending, is Venus and Jupiter. Between 9:24 and 9:49 p.m., so I got this now at 9:30, Venus, 28 degrees, 55 minutes, is going to hit a sextile to Jupiter. Over the next 36 hours, Venus will change signs. Over the next 5 days, Jupiter will change signs because on the 9th, Jupiter is going to change signs. These two hitting their supportive sextile here. It's like going to someone for advice of like, if you were my position, would you put up with this? They said this, they acted this way, they did this kind of stuff today. I can't believe they would even say that kind of thing. Whatever happened in the morning time, whenever the moon hit that opposition to Saturn and Neptune, it could have triggered that insecurity very quickly where it's just like, okay, I'm going to get through this week. I'm going to get through this event. I'm going to get through this meeting. I'm going to get through this one detail, whatever it is. And afterwards, I ain't playing. I'm not doing this. I'm not putting up with it. And there can be an awareness of the ending, an awareness of a closure, the awareness of something transitioning very, very quickly. I know we've had a lot of transitions up until this point, but it's some of the recent transitions are leading into this decision-making right here. It's leading into how this part is going to go and where we're going to go from here. Now, again, the Venus sextile Jupiter, this right here, we're in that vibration all day long. But a lot of us were coming to terms with whatever kind of presented itself throughout the day by the time we get into the evening time. Because remember, one of the first transits in the morning, Jupiter was involved, and it was right before the moon went into Libra. So it makes sense that we have some level of additional support, guidance, or initiative that kind of comes to the forefront into the evening time. Okay, moving this along. We're going into the 5th. We're going into Thursday. The moon is going to be in Libra all day long. A lot of the energy still speaks to wrapping something up, dealing with something for the last time. We don't have any big energy until we get into the afternoon. And I say big kind of loosely. Between 3 and 5 p.m., so I got this at 4:30, the sun at 15 degrees is going to hit a trine to the moon. So we have this vibration of the moon building into something. We're building into the full moon, but of course, we're not in a full moon yet. We are shedding light on something, sun trine the moon. And again, the moon is in Venus's sign, and Venus is wrapping up its trip in Aries. This is the last full day in Aries. So some of what's coming to light can be the awareness of something coming to an end, something coming to close, something that's going to not be the same. More awareness of something dynamically shifting. And the old ways of doing things, our old behaviors, our old habits, they won't continue. And there's something about this that speaks to like shedding additional light on someone, letting them know that something's coming to a close, or being told, yeah, after this week, I'm not doing this anymore. This is my last week here. Yeah, I'm not doing this the same way. Yeah, I'm not there anymore. It's like shedding light that something has come to a close, that something has come to an end. Okay. Between 3 and 5 p.m., we have the sun's trine to the moon. Whenever it gets to a little bit after this, actually, no, we're pretty close to it. I don't have to change it. I was looking at two things at once. Mercury is going to hit a sextile to Mars. Now, this part's really interesting because, again, it does correspond in the same timeline as the trine. Mercury is in the higher authority, giving guidance, giving direction, giving path. When I say direction, it is like direction of action. It's like, hey, these are the steps you need to take. Hey, this is what needs to get wrapped up. Hey, this has finally been approved. Hey, this is going in this direction. It is a guidance. It is something being spoken about. Now, it can be a very definitive action because, again, Mars is hosting Venus as Venus is wrapping up. But Mars is also hosting Saturn and Neptune. So part of that direction could be like, okay, this is almost wrapped up, so you can start this other thing. So you can do this other thing. So you can go in this other direction. And it can be a voicing of the long-term transition that is at play, if it's not necessarily about the ending. But there's a voicing, there's direction, there's approvals, there's something being communicated about a disruption, and it's either a disruption of something that has just come to a close or something that is about to begin, given the way the rest of the month is going to go. But there is direction between Mercury sextile to Mars, and this also corresponds with the trine from the sun and the moon. Now, late in the evening time at 11:43 p.m. Central Standard Time, that is when Venus is going to go into Taurus. So I'm just going to go ahead and bump this into Friday. Venus's entry into Taurus is going to go again, 11:43 p.m. A lot of people, you're going to be just wrapping stuff up over the course of Thursday. And Friday is going to feel different. It's going to feel new. Venus in her own home sign, that's my bathroom, my bedroom, my closet, my tools, my stuff, me. And Venus's entry into this area feels like the balance of new stability, of what something new can feel like. And this is actually a very helpful energy, given the fact that the moon is still in Libra as Venus changes signs. For the fixed signs, I want to be clear. Over the course of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there is the chance of meeting someone, like quite literally meeting a group or meeting someone for the first time after Venus's arrival. And I know that sounds like a really loaded statement, but it's true. And for some people, it can actually feed back to prior events, but over the course of the last few weeks, prior events. Okay. That'll make sense as we continue throughout the day on Friday. But all right. Between 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, Mars is going to hit a sextile to the moon. It's basically really close to exact right here. We're just past the exact. Here's Mars, 24 degrees, 4 minutes. Here's the moon, 24:09. It looks like it went exact closer to like 9:20. But again, there is direction, there is action, there is hope, there is reaction. Given in the same time frame, Mercury is also going to trine the moon. It's felt more exact over the course of 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I'm just going to bump this to 11:30 and you can kind of see that. It feels like some kind of action in the morning time, some type of energy that we know we need to do. We did have prior direction, and now it's like that direction is being picked back up on, of something new, something that is beginning, something that's fair for everybody, something that's stabilizing. Mercury is offering support, it's offering direction, it's offering additional knowledge and additional levels of hope. Between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m., the moon is going to hit an opposition to Chiron. It is looking at something that is wounded, looking at the solution, looking at the fix, looking at the outcome, how something has been brought to a certain point, where we have been at to where we are right now. Now, considering over the prior weekend, we had a Venus Chiron conjunction. This can actually be a feed off of the prior conjunction that was the most exact on Sunday. So June the 1st. There can be something that kind of lingers and feeds off of the prior energy into this, but seeing the solution, seeing the fix, talking about the wounds, talking about how we care for something, and considering Mercury is still in this energy, like Chiron is hitting the sextile to Mercury, it's going to go exact over the course of the day. There's a lot of things that speak to like a stair step of energy of like one continuous flow based off of what got finalized and what actions we're taking now to, again, deal with the wound, handle a solution, get something put together, and get something wrapped up. Now, again, moon opposition to Chiron goes the most exact between 12 and 2 p.m. As we get into the evening time, I'm going to bump this to 6:30 because this is going to be the start of what I want to talk about. Got that backwards. Between 6:30 and 9 p.m., Jupiter, you can see that right here, 2940 or 2920, is going to hit a trine to the moon. Right now it's at 2835. The reason I gave a little bit of an extra window right here is because Chiron's sextile to Mercury. Chiron, I've got him at 2557. You can see him right here, hitting that sextile to Mercury, 2555. This all happens like correspondent to each other. That again, it feels like the voicing of how we fix something, how this solution is going to impact another area, how we've got something finalized, how this can impact others in the start of something else. We have a stair step of situations. They're not super big. They actually feel very, very small. But it feels like a busyness in the energy of like, we did this to fix this, we'd fix this to do this. By doing this, it allowed for us to do this. It's like ping pong effect in a lot of ways, yes, but it feels like a stair stepping of situations and the arrival of like new stability, the new solution, the new fix. At 9:23 p.m. Central Standard Time, so it's 9:30. The moon is going to go into Scorpio. And as we go through the overnight hours, between 10:30 p.m. and 1 a.m., I'm giving a bigger window of this one too, the moon, got it now at 11:30, is going to hit an opposition to Venus. We've done this once before. When Mercury went into Taurus, the moon went into Scorpio and immediately hit an opposition. It was an arrival. It brought somebody new. It brought new things in. This still feels like that. It feels like once the moon goes into Scorpio, that there is an arrival, that there's some kind of new information, that there's some kind of benefit that gets reached, that there's some type of energy that speaks to stability and solutions, something that speaks to ending a power struggle or overcoming a certain kind of power struggle. But there is an uplifted vibration to the moon in Scorpio this time that doesn't feel like prior energy. Now, what I will say is once the moon is in Scorpio, is that things that have been initiated since the full moon last month can be coming full circle, becoming the full cycle, becoming full turn in regards to the power dynamic. Because whenever we had the full moon in Scorpio last month, we also had just started Mars in Leo. Now we have this lunation of building to a full moon. The full moon in Sag, it's going to happen next week. But bringing things full circle for those fixed signs as to what has started over the course of the last month once the moon goes back into Scorpio. This time, the moon in Scorpio feels very, very empowered, and I like it. I like it. I like it. I like it. There's that. So here's the moon, 1 degree, 2 minutes, hitting that opposition to Venus. For a lot of people, this is going to be the arrival of somebody at the house, meeting somebody while you're out at the bar, going out and doing something. In the human effect, we won't all be meeting somebody real late at night because not all of us go to the bar. I sure as hell don't. But whether it is Friday or Saturday, now on June 7th, there is something that speaks to an arrival whenever it comes to the fixed signs. And I just want to be clear about that. Now, the moon is going to be in Scorpio all day long. It's still going to be in that opposition to Venus as we go into Saturday. And then in the overnight hours between 3:30 and 5:30 a.m., so now I got this at 4:30, the moon in Scorpio is going to hit a square to Pluto. Now, this can be an understanding of past traumas, an understanding of past triggers, an understanding of past situations. Over the course of the weekend, Pluto and Venus will actually perfect into a square. So I want people to understand that while the moon is in Scorpio, this can directly play into whatever comes out through that square between Pluto and Venus right here. It's not exact. Again, it's going to go exact on the 9th, but there can be parts of this energy that speaks to prior vibrations feeding into it. But this little moments of over the course of Friday night, all day Saturday, and Sunday can also impact whatever plays out Monday on the 9th, whenever Venus and Pluto go into their exact square. So this vibration of the weekend feels different from the week, just to be absolutely clear. Okay, the moon squaring to Pluto, there can be a questioning of the plumbing issues, mundane stuff, a questioning of triggers or trauma, past situations, past abuse. There can be the questioning of power struggles. There can be brought forth the acceptance and awareness of power struggles and how it has changed someone, how it has impacted them. The moon hitting this square to Pluto can have acceptance of, I understand why you felt that way. Now, are we dealing with that all at 4:30 in the morning? No. The human effect is whatever this activated, the moon's opposition to Venus and the moon square to Pluto, can play out over the course of the day on the 7th while the moon is going through Scorpio, because there's no other direct transits. So it feels like an activation of something that needs to play out over the course of the entire weekend. It's facing a fear, overcoming a dynamic, overcoming a struggle, and realizing something needs to end, something needs to come to a close. And our mind becomes very active at the idea of something needs to come to a close over the course of the weekend. This close feels separate from the prior close. It feels like two different dynamics closing that I'm talking about now. Okay. Over the course of Saturday, again, the moon's going to be in Scorpio all day long. What we are dealing with is the buildup of Mercury and Jupiter coming into their conjunction, because this is getting tighter and tighter. And it is going to be a bigger impact on Sunday. So now I'm getting this into the 8th. You can see that right here. Mercury's conjunction to Jupiter is going to go exact between 3:01 and 3:25 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I'm going to get this to the afternoon to 3:30, and there we are. Here's Jupiter, 29 degrees, 46 minutes. Here's Mercury, 29 degrees, 47 minutes. This conjunction is happening all day. We're in the vibration of this conjunction all day long. So there can be a communication, there can be an idea, there can be a topic of something that as soon as we agree that it cannot continue, that it won't continue, it leads to an immediate effect, an immediate vibration afterwards, something immediately happening afterwards. Because by 5:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, so now I'm going to bump this to 6:30, Mercury is going to go into Cancer. And over the course of the next 24 hours, while Mercury is in Cancer, it is in a square from Saturn. Now, the Saturn square to Mercury, it does not go exact until the 9th, but we're talking about things that are coming to an agreement, coming into vibration, that must be immediately announced, pronounced, talked about, delivered, and they set the stage for what is happening in that next week. Now, the energy of the 8th activates something that will encompass all of the rest of the month. This week is coming to terms with things that need to come to an end, things that need to come to a close, things that aren't working out certain ways. Now, for some of us, it's not that it's not working out. It's just that the project is almost done. The job is almost done. The mental agreement, the physical agreement, whatever we have, that verbiage is coming to a close. And we're starting to see another side. We're starting to see how we transition from here. And it doesn't have to be heavy. But this week feels like a series of energies coming to a point of closure and moving into something else, switching into something else, a transference of awareness as to what all encompasses the rest of June. We need to allow a few more things to come to a close now that so much has come to the forefront. We had so much that went wrong. And then we went into the last part of April and coming into May, and all of that felt like stepping into a new world, stepping into a new normal. Now we're a little bit more familiar with the new normal, and we're realizing, okay, I really like this, but for me to make this work, I can't do this the same way. I can't work with them. I can't go in that route. I can't trust in this process. I have to go in this other direction. The responsibility is shifting. Now, you can have a series of small things just coming to a close. Like I said, it can be small little projects, little things you've already been working on around the house, little things you've been doing with your family, that they're just going to naturally come to a normal closure, a normal last little thing. And then something else will come through that is like, oh, well, because that's over, I guess I don't need to do this either. I guess I'm not going to do this the same way. I guess something over here is going to change. Or starting next week, we're going to do it this way. We're going to do this, but that means we've got to, wrap up these other things or finalize something over here or clear something out over here so that other thing can begin. The new part of the process, the new part of the procedure, the new part of our routine. Something will reach little peaks, something will come to a close, something will be overcome. And whatever gets agreed to, whatever gets brought to the light, whatever gets brought to the forefront will have immediate need, immediate announcements that are either going to come through Sunday night or they are going to be worked through and announced over the course of Monday. But whatever gets agreed upon, whatever communication really hits at the end of the week, it's important. Mercury's conjunction to Jupiter is important because it's the one and only time these two planets will hit a conjunction while they are hosting the nodes. So not only are we at a turning point based off of the cycle that we're in, the lunar cycle of this is the new moon and full moon before in between eclipse seasons. So not only are we at that turning point, but we're also at a turning point in regards to what we're willing to begin from here. And the commitments that we make through the month of June are going to set the stage for the rest of the summer. The commitments, the arrivals, the agreements, the new part of our routine, they set the stage for the entire rest of the summer and how we work through things from here. So as we get closer to the end of the week, the power in the dynamic will not be easily seen or understood at first, but it will lead to bigger things, larger things over the course of the entire rest of the month. This week sets the stage for the entire summer in big and small ways. There's some things that need to get wrapped up. There's some things that need to come to a close. There's some things that are going to end. But because we don't have that anchor of something or someone holding us back, we don't have this tie anymore, in good ways and bad ways. I hate saying that because sometimes I've literally seen 6 deaths in the last week right around that new moon. So sometimes the anchor was an actual person. And because we don't have that person there anymore, it is forcing us to look in new ways. But the force forward is necessary because, again, regardless of how it happened, not everyone that we had before goes with us into the new normal. Not everything that we had before, we had to make space in some kind of ways. Sometimes the universe made the space for us and we didn't get a choice. But we had to make that space to know where we were going to be going next, to get accustomed to the new normal. The dynamics of this week, the weight, the responsibility, the emotions, the ideas, the decisions, what is communicated, it sets the stage for the rest of the summer. And I can't make that more clear than that. Okay. I got a lot of background noise. I apologize for that. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.